Most traders believe their edge lies on the chart. They search for it in indicators, time frames, entries, exits, anything visible, measurable, mechanical. And yet after years of effort, frustration remains. The results stay inconsistent. Confidence rises and collapses. Discipline comes and goes. That's because the real edge was never on the chart. An edge is not a setup. An edge is not a system. An edge is not even accuracy. Your true edge is psychological. It is the ability to execute your strategy the same way, over and over again, regardless of the outcome of the last trade, the last loss, or the last win. Consistent profits are not the reward for being right more often. They are the byproduct of a mind that has learned how to think in probabilities, accept uncertainty, and remain emotionally neutral in an environment that constantly invites emotional reactions. Mastering your edge means mastering yourself, your expectations, your beliefs, and your relationship with risk. Most traders spend their entire careers trying to prove that they are right on the next trade. They look at the chart and ask a single, dangerous question: what is this market about to do? That question sets off a chain reaction inside the mind: expectation, hope, fear, hesitation. And before the trade is even placed, the trader is already emotionally involved. This is where consistency begins to break down, not because the strategy is flawed, but because the trader has unknowingly violated the psychological conditions required for an edge to function. An edge does not exist in a single trade. It never has. An edge is not a prediction, a guarantee, or a promise. An edge is simply a higher probability of one thing happening over another, over a series of trades. The moment you isolate one trade and assign it importance, you step out of probabilistic thinking and into emotional thinking. At that point, the edge becomes irrelevant because your behavior will no longer be aligned with it. The market environment is fundamentally uncertain. No matter how refined your analysis is, no matter how many confirmations line up, the outcome of the next trade is unknowable. When traders intellectually understand this but emotionally resist it, they create internal conflict. They say they accept uncertainty, but their actions reveal otherwise. They hesitate on valid signals. They tighten stops out of fear. They take profits early to avoid disappointment. They skip trades after losses and overtrade after wins. None of these behaviors come from a lack of knowledge. They come from the inability to fully accept that anything can happen. When you truly accept that anything can happen, the next trade loses its emotional weight. It no longer has the power to define you, validate you, or threaten you. It becomes just one occurrence in a long sequence of similar events. This shift is critical because consistency is not built on outcomes, it is built on behavior. And behavior can only remain consistent when the trader is psychologically neutral. Most traders sabotage their edge because they secretly believe that a good trader should know what is going to happen next. This belief creates unrealistic expectations. When the market does something unexpected, the trader experiences frustration or fear, not because money was lost, but because reality violated their expectation. The pain is not financial, it is psychological. And once pain enters the equation, the trader instinctively tries to avoid it in the future. That avoidance is what destroys consistency. An edge requires repetition. It requires the same action taken under the same conditions again and again without emotional interference. You cannot evaluate an edge based on a single outcome, just as you cannot evaluate a casino's advantage based on one roll of the dice. Casinos do not care what happens on the next spin. They care about thousands of spins. They are completely detached from individual outcomes because they understand the math of probability. Traders, on the other hand, often understand probability intellectually but not emotionally. The moment you emotionally react to a loss, you are telling yourself that the loss should not have happened. That belief puts you at odds with the nature of probabilities. Losses are not mistakes when they occur within the rules of your edge. They are expected. They are required. Without them, probabilities cannot function. When you resist losses emotionally, you begin to interfere with the process that produces long-term profits. Consistency emerges when the trader stops trying to control outcomes and starts committing to execution. This commitment is only possible when you define success correctly. Success is not making money on the next trade. Success is executing your edge flawlessly, regardless of the outcome. When success is defined this way, every trade becomes a win at the behavioral level. This removes emotional pressure and allows you to stay aligned with your strategy over time. Your edge does not need you to be confident. It does not need you to feel good. It does not need you to believe the trade will work. It only needs you to execute it. Confidence in trading is not the cause of success. It is the result of repeatedly doing the right thing in an uncertain environment. That confidence can only develop when you stop judging yourself based on individual results. Many traders believe they are trading a system, but in reality, they are trading their beliefs about what should happen. When the market does not behave according to those beliefs, they experience stress. Stress leads to errors, and errors are then blamed on discipline or psychology without addressing the core issue, the failure to accept that an edge only works over time. The market does not reward certainty. It rewards alignment with probability. Probability requires detachment. Detachment requires acceptance. Acceptance requires a complete shift in how you perceive risk. Risk is not something to be avoided, it is something to be embraced and defined in advance. When you accept the risk of every trade fully before entering, the outcome loses its ability to surprise you emotionally. At that point, wins do not create euphoria, and losses do not create despair. Both are simply feedback. Both are expected. And because they are expected, they do not alter your behavior. This is the psychological foundation of consistency. Your edge only exists when you allow it to play out. Every time you hesitate, modify, skip, or interfere with a valid trade, you break the statistical chain that makes the edge meaningful. You may feel safer in the moment, but you are trading emotional comfort for long-term inconsistency. The market does not punish this immediately, which is why the habit persists. The damage shows up later in erratic equity curves and self-doubt. When traders finally understand this at a deep level, trading becomes simpler. Not easier, but simpler. The mental noise quiets down, the need to predict disappears. The urge to control outcomes fades. The trader stops asking, will this trade work? And starts asking, did I execute my edge? That is the turning point. From that moment on, the trader is no longer dependent on the outcome of the next trade to feel okay. They are grounded in a process. And a process, when executed consistently, produces results that no single trade ever could. This is why the professionals survive and the amateurs cycle in and out. Professionals think in series. Amateurs think in moments. Professionals accept uncertainty. Amateurs fight it. Professionals measure themselves by execution. Amateurs measure themselves by outcome. Your edge has always been there. It has never disappeared. The only question is whether you are willing to stop interfering with it long enough to let it work. Once you do, consistency stops being something you chase and becomes something you naturally express. Most traders believe the market is difficult because it is complex. In reality, the market is difficult because it constantly provokes emotional responses. Price moves up and down without warning, outcomes are uncertain, and money is always at risk. This environment is perfectly designed to activate fear, hope, frustration, and euphoria. The trader who does not understand this ends up fighting the market, when in truth, they are fighting themselves. Emotional neutrality is not about suppressing emotions or pretending you don't feel anything. It is about reaching a state where emotions no longer influence your decisions. This state is the real competitive advantage because it allows you to perceive information objectively and act consistently. Most traders never reach this point because they believe emotions are a natural part of trading that must simply be managed. What they don't realize is that emotions are generated by beliefs, and beliefs can be changed. Every emotional reaction in trading comes from a gap between expectation and reality. When you expect a trade to work and it doesn't, you feel disappointment or anger. When you expect to lose and the trade moves against you quickly, you feel fear. When you expect a big win and it happens, you feel excitement and euphoria. None of these emotions come from the market itself. They come from what you believed should happen. The market does not know you exist. It does not care about your position, your analysis, or your need to be right. It simply moves. Emotional neutrality begins when you stop assigning personal meaning to market behavior. A losing trade is not a reflection of your intelligence. A winning trade is not proof of your skill. Both are simply outcomes within a probabilistic environment. Most traders believe discipline is the ability to override emotional impulses. They try to force themselves to follow rules while still holding beliefs that generate fear and hope. This creates internal conflict. One part of the mind wants to follow the plan, while another part wants to avoid pain or secure pleasure. The result is inconsistency. True discipline does not come from force. It comes from alignment. When your beliefs are aligned with the realities of the market, disciplined behavior happens naturally. Emotional neutrality requires full acceptance of risk. This does not mean you like losing money. It means you have accepted the possibility of loss completely before entering the trade. When risk is truly accepted, there is no shock when a loss occurs. There is no emotional spike because the outcome was already accounted for mentally. The trader who has not accepted risk reacts emotionally because the loss violates an unspoken expectation, the expectation that this trade should work. Fear in trading is not fear of losing money. It is fear of being wrong, fear of failure, fear of disappointment, fear of what a loss means about you. When these fears exist, the trader will always try to control outcomes. They will manage trades emotionally, not strategically. They will exit early, move stops, hesitate, or avoid valid setups altogether. These actions are attempts to avoid emotional pain, not to improve performance. Neutrality emerges when you stop needing the market to validate you. When your self-worth is no longer tied to winning or losing, trades lose their emotional charge. At that point, you are free to follow your edge without interference. This is why two traders can use the same strategy and get completely different results. The difference is not the method, it is the emotional state in which the method is executed. Many traders confuse confidence with emotional neutrality. Confidence based on recent wins is fragile. It disappears after a loss. Emotional neutrality, on the other hand, is stable. It does not rise with wins or fall with losses. It comes from knowing that your job is not to predict or control, but to execute. When you truly accept this role, pressure disappears. The market constantly tempts traders to react. A fast move triggers fear of missing out. A drawdown triggers fear of loss. A winning streak triggers overconfidence. Emotional traders ride this roller coaster, making decisions based on how they feel in the moment. Neutral traders step off the ride. They respond instead of react. They act according to predefined rules, not emotional impulses. This neutrality allows you to see opportunities clearly. Fear narrows perception. Excitement distorts judgment. When emotions dominate, traders see what they want to see, not what is actually there. Neutrality opens perception. You see the market as it is, not as you hope or fear it to be. This clarity is a massive advantage in an environment where most participants are emotionally compromised. Accepting uncertainty is a key component of neutrality. The need for certainty creates tension. When you need to know what will happen next, every tick becomes stressful. When you accept that you cannot know, the stress disappears. You stop monitoring trades obsessively. You stop interpreting every fluctuation as meaningful. You allow the trade to unfold. Emotional neutrality also protects you from extremes. After wins, it prevents euphoria, which leads to overconfidence and rule breaking. After losses, it prevents despair, which leads to hesitation and avoidance. By staying centered, you remain consistent. Consistency is not exciting. It is calm, repetitive, and often boring. That boredom is a sign of neutrality. Most traders think the goal is to feel good while trading. In reality, the goal is to feel nothing in particular. When trading feels dramatic, intense, or emotionally charged, something is wrong. The best traders experience trading as routine. Each trade is just another execution of an edge, no more significant than the last. Neutrality does not eliminate responsibility. You are still accountable for following your rules. But accountability is easier when emotions are not clouding judgment. You don't rationalize mistakes. You don't blame the market. You simply observe whether you followed your process and make adjustments if necessary. This is why emotional neutrality is the real competitive advantage. Strategies can be copied. Indicators can be shared. Information is available to everyone. But neutrality cannot be downloaded or borrowed. It must be developed internally through belief change and repeated exposure to uncertainty with acceptance. When you reach this state, trading stops feeling like a battle. There is no urge to win. There is no need to recover losses quickly. There is no emotional attachment to outcomes. There is only execution. At that point, profits become a side effect, not a goal. And when profits are no longer the emotional focus, consistency finally becomes possible. The trader who achieves emotional neutrality has already solved the hardest part of trading, not the market, but themselves. Most traders believe consistent profits are the reward for working harder. They study longer, analyze more charts, refine entries, add rules, remove rules, and constantly search for something that will finally make everything click. Effort becomes their solution to inconsistency. When results don't improve, they assume they are not trying hard enough. This belief keeps them trapped in a cycle of frustration, because consistency in trading is not created by effort. It is created by identity. Identity determines behavior. Behavior determines results. If your identity is that of someone who is still trying to win, prove something, or avoid failure, your actions will always reflect that, no matter how much knowledge you have. You might know exactly what to do, yet fail to do it in the moment. This gap between knowing and doing is not a skill problem. It is an identity conflict. Most traders operate from the identity of a hopeful participant. They hope the trade works. They hope this setup will be different. They hope the market will reward their effort. Hope creates attachment. Attachment creates emotional involvement. Emotional involvement destroys consistency. As long as you need the market to give you something emotionally, validation, relief, confidence, you will never execute your edge cleanly. Consistent traders do not try to be consistent. They are consistent. Their behavior is not forced. It is automatic. They show up, wait for their edge, execute, and move on. There is no internal debate, no emotional bargaining, no second guessing. This is not because they have more discipline, but because their identity is aligned with the realities of the market. When your identity is tied to being right, losses feel personal. When your identity is tied to making money, drawdowns feel threatening. When your identity is tied to effort, you feel frustrated when effort is not rewarded. Each of these identities creates pressure. Pressure creates emotional reactions. Emotional reactions lead to inconsistent behavior. A trader who has adopted the identity of a professional does not define themselves by outcomes. They define themselves by execution. Their sense of self remains stable regardless of what happens in the market. This stability is what allows consistent performance over time. They are not emotionally lifted by wins or crushed by losses, because neither one changes who they believe they are. Effort in trading often looks productive, but it can be a distraction. Constant analysis feels like progress, but it often masks uncertainty and fear. Overworking is frequently an attempt to gain control in an environment where control does not exist. The market does not reward effort. It rewards alignment with probability. Identity determines whether that alignment is possible. Most traders experience inconsistency because they switch identities unconsciously. After a loss, they become cautious, defensive, or fearful. After a win, they become confident, aggressive, or careless. Their behavior changes because their identity changes with outcomes. Consistent traders do not allow outcomes to redefine them. Their identity remains constant, and so does their behavior. This is why motivation is unreliable in trading. Motivation comes and goes. It depends on mood, recent results, and external circumstances. Identity does not fluctuate. When your identity is clear, you do not need motivation. You do what you do because that is who you are. A trader who identifies as someone who executes an edge flawlessly does not need to feel motivated to do so. They simply act in alignment with that identity. Many traders try to build consistency through rules and routines alone. While these are important, they are not enough. Rules do not enforce themselves. They are only followed when they align with your self-image. If you see yourself as someone who cuts winners early, you will do that regardless of what your rules say. If you see yourself as someone who panics under pressure, you will behave that way when pressure appears. Identity always overrides intention. Changing identity requires a shift in how you define success. As long as success is defined as winning trades or making money quickly, identity will remain unstable. When success is defined as executing your process flawlessly, identity stabilizes. Each trade becomes an opportunity to reinforce who you are, not to prove something to the market. This shift removes emotional urgency. There is no rush to recover losses. There is no excitement about winning streaks. There is only consistency, and consistency over time produces profits. Not because you are trying to make money, but because you are no longer interfering with the process that makes money possible. Identity-based trading also changes how you handle mistakes. Instead of reacting emotionally, you observe them objectively. You do not judge yourself. You do not spiral into self-criticism. You simply notice the behavior, understand why it happened, and realign. This is how professionals improve without emotional damage. Most traders wait for confidence before acting. They believe they must feel ready, certain, or calm before executing. This is backwards. Identity comes first, behavior follows. Confidence is the byproduct of repeatedly acting in alignment with who you believe you are. When your identity is stable, confidence becomes irrelevant. You execute whether you feel confident or not. Consistent profits are not achieved by becoming smarter or faster. They are achieved by becoming more aligned with probabilities, aligned with risk, aligned with uncertainty, and most importantly, aligned with an identity that does not depend on outcomes. When this alignment is in place, trading becomes simple. You stop forcing results. You stop trying to outperform the market. You stop measuring yourself by short-term performance. You focus on execution, repetition, and process. Over time, the equity curve smooths out not because the market changed, but because you did. The trader who understands this stops asking, "How can I try harder?" and starts asking, "Who do I need to be?" That question changes everything. Consistent profits are not something you achieve through effort. They are something you express through identity. And once that identity is established, the results take care of themselves. Consistency is not a technique you discover or a strategy you perfect. It is the natural outcome of a mind that has accepted uncertainty, embraced probability, and let go of the need for validation. When your edge is executed without emotional interference, when neutrality replaces reaction, and when identity replaces effort, trading stops being a struggle. At that point, results no longer depend on motivation or mood. They become a reflection of alignment. And once you are aligned, consistent profits are no longer something you chase, they are simply what happens over time.